Yeah, so during this month of November, we're just being blunt. It takes resources to run this place. We're asking everybody who's part of the community to consider making a financial pledge for 2026 so that our session, as they meet these next couple of months here at the end of the year, can make good decisions about what to prioritize in our budget as we keep moving forward. So in that vein, I want to preach on the value of generosity, the importance of generosity. We're all here, I think, and I think Matthew was giving voice to this. We're here because we've had some kind of experience with God's generosity towards us, right? And maybe that flows through the faces and the lives of other people. Standard Christian confession is that in the face of Jesus Christ, God lavishes us with excessive, extravagant love. And we respond to that love by learning to become generous people, letting blessings flow through us in whatever small ways that can happen. So this Luke gospel passage was the assigned lectionary reading for the day, and at first I thought, oh, that's off target. I'm just going to ditch that and do something else. And then I read through it, and I thought, no, actually, this is weird, but it's perfect for today, because, and I'll get to this passage about 7 guys marrying the same woman, whose wife will she be? This passage can express, I think, why so many of us are committed to the ministry and mission of this congregation. So hang with me for a minute. I'll try to make sense of that. So when we read a gospel passage like this, we are supposed to criticize the Sadducees, right? We're supposed to see them as the unfaithful, stubborn people. We're supposed to criticize them for their unwillingness to believe in the resurrection or the new age. We're supposed to criticize them for trying to trap Jesus with a trick question. We can even criticize them, as some biblical scholars do, for their wealth. They tended to be the wealthier, more educated Jews. For their lack of interest in the poor. And in fact, it is the poor who often tend to hope for resurrection and a new age. But here's the turn. What if we read this passage differently today? What if we imagine ourselves with the Sadducees, asking questions alongside the Sadducees? What if we celebrated this morning the church's ministry of asking difficult questions, of pressing into the challenge and complexity of imagining something like resurrection or transformation or newness? What does all that mean? After all, it's not a crazy question that they ask of Jesus. Now, it's kind of ratcheted up, exaggerated for comic effect. 7 brothers marry the same wife? Really? What's going on in that family, right? Genetically. All of them die. How is this gonna, this is the Sadducees' question, right? This is the setup. How's this gonna work out in the resurrection? Whose wife will she be? Won't it be kind of awkward, they're saying to Jesus, in glory, with this woman standing around 7 guys as her husband? So again, we know what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to root against the Sadducees. We're supposed to cheer for Jesus as if we're always obviously on his side. But what if we took responsibility for the kind of faith community we actually are? By which I mean we are a people full of questions. This one and other ones. A people trying to believe, trying to see the light, trying to live in the light of this coming dawn, but always failing and foundering, needing lots of help from God's Spirit. What if we saw in these not sufficiently imaginative Sadducees people just like us, people who are trying to love God, but who often have a hard time fitting all the pieces together? Jesus' answer to their question is provocative. He offers us a crash course in how to imagine something utterly new. Marriage, says Jesus, only matters in this age, right now, for these times. But for those taking part in any coming age, marriage won't hold, it won't apply, it won't obtain. This is Jesus' argument. They will neither marry nor be given in marriage, Jesus says. What? What about all our talk of grandma when she dies getting to go be with grandpa? What about the popular hope expressed by many people you know and I know this hope to spend eternity reunited with our beloved ones, spouses, and other loved ones who've died before us. Jesus says those in the coming age will be like the angels. They will be children of resurrection, never to die again. Now let's play with this language a little bit. Angels don't have sexed bodies or gendered identities. They don't mate or reproduce or pair up in any particular conventions, marriage or otherwise. They are utterly embodied flame, radically pure and unadulterated praise, built to sing and pray in unending joy and festivity, playful for their whole lives and shot through with desire and love. That's what angelic existence is. They embody unending, ecstatic delight they share with all other creatures. And Jesus says that glorified, resurrected bodies won't be male or female, won't be married. They will be pure flame, pure praise, pure delight, pure love connected to everything else. And the bonds connecting all these glorified bodies will be so utterly intimate that no special bonds will be needed. The intimacy of marriage won't be relevant in the resurrection age because all of creation will be involved in a glorious and joyful dance of love. That's the answer. So reading today's gospel passage against the grain, trying to side in kind of an honorary way with Jesus' conversation partners instead of with Jesus, can remind us that one of our central strengths as a congregation is our deep curiosity, our sense of wonder at the mystery of being alive, our argumentative and feisty and questioning form of belief, our willingness to wrestle with the good news of Scripture as people who are called to use our minds to think critically and creatively, to be part of a community that fosters these values. That is no small thing. I'm not saying that we do it perfectly, but I will say that personally, I am grateful to be part of a community like this, so I echo Matthew's words, because there are many faith communities that do not value this work of creativity and imagination at all. Instead, it's all about being right, having the right answers. So, one of the reasons we give generously to support the ministries of this congregation is that all of us want to belong to a community that inspires us to stay open and flexible, to keep asking the largest and most profound questions. We need to stay connected to a faith tradition that warns us not to close down, but to keep our eyes open and to nourish our sense of wonder and amazement at the world around us. How beautiful, how complex, how complicated, how mysterious it all is. But let's be honest, the rhythms of life that have nurtured congregations like ours and weekly worship like this for generations, those rhythms no longer hold. We're in a different day and age. So how will we find a way to survive and flourish as a healthy community of God's good news for decades to come? How will we keep this rolling? Well, it might help to imagine ourselves as elephants or mountain climbers. Give me a minute. You'll notice the front of your bulletin. Might help to imagine ourselves as elephants who drink at watering holes, or as mountain climbers who need a base camp. Let me start with the elephants, and then I'll get to Everest. This is all from an article in the National Geographic. Researchers studying elephant behavior in Namibia discovered that elephants know where all the watering holes are. It was long assumed that elephants just wandered around the savannah, eating and playing, and then moved toward watering holes when they got close enough to see them, or at least got close enough to the watering holes to hear the wildlife at the watering hole. But by tracking the elephants, scientists discovered that the elephants don't wander at all. They know exactly where they're going. They're able to keep track of where the nearest watering holes are, no matter where the elephants, are. They don't wander haphazardly. They forage, and then when they're ready to drink, they turn and head straight for the nearest watering hole. They're able to do this because they have a certain kind of a spatialized memory. Elephants know where the nearest watering hole is, even if it's up to 30 miles away. I once took communion to a member of the congregation I served, and this woman had dementia, and she was in a care facility. And so I got there and greeted her. I took out my little kit. I put the wafer on a little plate, and I had a flask. So I poured from my flask in the little cup and got everything set up. So I recited the familiar words to her about Jesus taking the bread and cup and offering it to the disciples. And I prayed, and then I served this woman the elements, the bread and the cup, and then I prayed again. And when I was finished praying, she looked up with wide eyes in astonishment and said, "I've never done this before, but I love this. This is beautiful." In fact, this woman, this faithful woman, had been receiving communion for her entire life. But because her short-term memory was fading, she couldn't remember in an explicit or conscious way participating in this ritual feast that connects us to the living Christ and to one another. And yet something else, something deep in her body and in her experience told her that these elements were part of a ritual feast that binds us all into this beautiful shared community. She's like an elephant who still knows where to find water. And when life bumps us around and bends us out of shape, we make our way back here, back together, back to where our thirsty lives are satisfied. That's elephants. Now switch gears to mountain climbing, and you'll notice the image on the front of your bulletin is a base camp at Mount Everest. If you want to climb Mount Everest, you don't just show up one day. You have to register for a license. You have to climb under the guidance of a local company that handles all the logistics. Just this past year, about 700 people attempted to climb Mount Everest. And every year, basically this pop-up city is built at the bottom of the world's tallest mountain. Everest Base Camp is located at the foot of the Khumbu Glacier on the south side of Everest in Nepal. It takes mountaineers a full week just to hike to the base camp, unless they're rich, in which case a helicopter drops them off there. The base camp is pitched at about 17,500 feet above sea level. That's an important number because humans can't survive for very long above 18,000 feet. Somewhere between 18 and 19,000 feet, the human body begins to degrade and life is not sustainable, at least not for very long. So a well-provisioned base camp is an absolute necessity for anyone trying to summit Everest. From camp, then they can wait for the right weather and they can make a dash for the peak, knowing that they need to return to camp within a 3 to 5 day window if they want to survive the attempt. Now this from the article I was reading, quote, "The fanciest commercial outfitters now provide walk-in walled tents with beds, unlimited electricity through gasoline generators, hot showers, strong, reliable Wi-Fi, projectors for after-dinner movies, and dedicated tents for yoga or stretching. Such creature comforts don't come cheap. The most luxurious operators charge upwards of $100,000. The more budget outfits will cost you between $25,000 and $40,000. Many large expeditions have their own doctors embedded with them as a team, but if you have a serious medical issue, it's imperative to leave base camp as quickly as possible to descend to a lower altitude. At the Khumbu Glacier Base Camp, the Himalayan Rescue Association's Everest ER provides walk-in services, and then patients with serious issues will be evacuated via helicopter to Kathmandu for treatment as quickly as possible." Base camps, mountain climbing. This community is a base camp for people living adventurous lives. That's what we do. We gather here, and then we're sent back out by God's Spirit to embody God's good news in our varied lives and callings. We don't spend all week together. We gather and disperse, God's Spirit breathing us in and then back out in these weekly rhythms. And if Westport Presbyterian Church is your base camp, then I would ask you to be as generous as you can with your time, your energy, your gifts, and your finances. If this community provides for you the rest, the reconnection, the supplies, the provisions, and the healing that sends you back into your week, inspired to serve other people with your gifts, then I hope you will make it a priority to give back to this community as God leads you. I was thinking about some of the ways that I spend money. And to be honest, some of the ways I spend money isn't that fun. It just goes out. And it even goes out with a little bit of resentment, right? I don't like putting gas in my car because I don't even like cars, but I have to. So I do that. I don't like paying for a family cell phone plan, but that's just life. I do that. I don't enjoy paying our property taxes, but that's part of my civic duty, so I do that. And on and on. You could add to my list, right? But sometimes, once in a while, we give to a project that really brings us deep joy. One of our close friends emailed us a few years ago, and it was about his Kickstarter project for a pizza startup in Minneapolis that would function as an employment center for people who had recently been released from prison. And we gave immediately and gladly. Here was a project that carried all the things that we value and love in life: risk, creativity, care, social justice, all of this being done by a person we love deeply as a friend. So when you give generously to something that you really believe in, when it's a team effort where you're making a real contribution to making the world tangibly better, you will never miss the money. Well, not much. In one of the congregations I served, there were parents who encouraged their young children to make pledges, the kids, using their allowance and their birthday money. So the kids were in elementary school. I think the younger one made a financial pledge of $10 for the coming year, and I think the older sibling made a pledge of $15. Those were small gifts, but they were beautiful gifts. And that's why I remember them, and that's why I'm telling you that story, because every contribution counts. Even small gifts count. They're part of the way that God provides for our shared community life, and they express how all of us are being shaped by good news stories of generosity and sharing as the path towards real joy and real satisfaction in life. So friends, as I hope you can tell from the tone of my voice, I am not trying to convince anyone to do anything. I'm the pastor for a congregation full of generous, faithful people, and I'm just doing my best to try to remind us to keep up the good work, keep at it. I'm trying to remind us that there is great joy in sharing what we have, so may God bless you and provide for you and your family in the coming year as you give what you can. Now to the one who supplies all we need, to the giver who grounds the world and grows it, to this one be all praise, honor, and glory, now and forever.